Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Let's talk about Impact Wrestling Against All Odds 2021. Let's start with the main event because that's really the only match I sat and paid attention all the way through. So the main event was Kenny Omega versus Moose for the TNA and Impact World titles. Now the match was heel versus heel and it took place in Daly's Place. Daly's Place as a venue was fine. But the match looked like a dark match because there were no damn lights, especially where the hard camera was. It was just so incredibly dark. Justin Roberts and the crowd actually helped. It definitely made this match feel like a bigger match than everything else that was on the card. Tony Schiavone was on the commentary, so was Don Callis, and so was Scott D'Amore. So that was interesting. That was better. Then you had Kenny Omega and Moose, which is a heel versus heel match. It's also a match where one man is significantly larger than the other. So they told a decent story at the beginning where Omega was trying to do things like put Moose in a headlock and Moose would just stand up. You know, sometimes Moose would try to, or Omega would try to like throw a strike or something like that, and Moose wouldn't sell it. So they were trying to basically say like, okay, they're showing you that Moose is strong and, you know, Omega's not going to be able to move him easily. Then it just kind of went into a regular Omega match after that. You know, his technique and high flying and all that kind of stuff, you know, gave him an advantage. And Moose was, you know, got to show his agility. And there was a space where the match, like if you could say the turner, the turner, the spot that turned the corner, is where Moose is mocking Kenny Omega, you know, the finger guns, and he goes to jump on him over the barricade. He sails clearly over the barricade, hits the metal stairs back behind the barricade, injures his arm. So now Omega has, you know, a target to work on. And there's a pretty sweet armbar spot that took place a little bit later, even though it was kind of sloppy. So throughout the match, they kept showing that Omega was having problems lifting Moose because the size differential was about 70 some odd pounds, I think. And so Moose is starting to regain some feeling in his arm. He's really trying to fight back. Again, he's a heel. The crowd is solidly behind him, of course. But we're in this position where we know that they coach the crowds in AEW. And I'm pretty sure it was a paid audience. So they probably were told that Moose is working babyface here. Even though he really didn't. Because he didn't try to elicit any positive crowd reaction. He just, you know, avoided cheating. Anyway, Omega pulled the referee into the way so that when Moose did the spear, he speared the ref. Omega was down, and then the Young Bucks came in. They invited him to a super kick party. They hit him with the BTE trigger. Then the three of them, Omega and the Young Bucks, it was an aided one-winged angel for the pin. So Moose lost due to the interference by the Young Bucks. Don Callis was, you know, thrilled, of course. Scott D'Amore was furious. Tony Schiavone sounded like he didn't want to be there. After the pinfall, of course, the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega were excited. Then Sami Callihan teleported to the arena with his baseball bat, fresh off of his victory in the first match. So I don't have to go through that match now that I've spoiled it. But he's hitting the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega with a baseball bat. Don Callis is like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Then he fired Sami Callihan and said that I'm an executive vice president at Impact Wrestling. You're fired. I'm your boss. Therefore, you are fired. And in a sense, he's canceling the match at Slammiversary because that's the match that was supposed to be Sami Callihan versus Kenny Omega. And Scott D'Amore was huffed and stormed off, and that's how the show went off the air. So the show went off the air in what was a pretty bad way. You know, it sucked. The match itself was plotting and slow, and it was not very good. I I can't put into words how much of a slog it was, but mostly because it was heel versus heel. Secondly, there wasn't enough hope spots to make people believe that Moose could win. Like, look, for starters, with the size differential, there should always be more of an opportunity for the bigger guy to win. But it just didn't come across. Like, it's a thing with the Young Bucks and with Kenny Omega. They're smaller guys, but they want to wrestle 50-50 with everybody, regardless of their size. And it's like you should be able to show weakness and show that, you can't beat this guy. This guy's too strong. They keep talking about Moose being this like 5'2" athlete, that he's big, strong, and fast. So it's like, why is Omega wrestling 50-50 with him? It should be, Moose is dominant, and then Omega, does trickery to get some. And that's kind of how it was. It did some of that. Like I said, when Moose jumped over the barricade, it was like basically Moose gave him, created the opening for Omega, rather than Omega using his superior tactical skill, superior experience to create an opening. It basically fell into his lap because Moose was being arrogant. Which, I guess could happen in the context of a pro wrestling story. But I didn't really care for the match, and I hated the finish. I just thought the finish was such garbage. It was a really garbage finish. I really don't like the idea that the Young Bucks, small as they are, again, can just shut these guys down like this. Like, this would have been a great time to do a hope spot where, instead of them super kicking him 100 times and then hitting him with the BTE trigger, that he kind of turns around and he catches their super kick and he throws one into the other and he clotheslines them both over the top rope. And then that gives Omega the opportunity to go low, hit him in the nuts, or, hit him with the belt or something like that while his back's turned. And then he uses the one-winged angel, or he doesn't beat him with the one-winged angel at all, or he beats him with something else. And I feel like this whole ordeal is not helping Impact at all. Like, I know that Access Media really likes this storyline because they like everybody involved, because they like everything that AEW does. But this storyline is not very good, and it's been continuously one-sided, with the exception of the Good Brothers doing all these jobs. And to be quite honest, they're Impact talent, so it doesn't matter, how many jobs they do. They're Impact guys. With the exception of the Good Brothers doing all the jobs in this situation, it's just been Impact getting mollywopped week after week and dissed and treated as a second-class citizen. Even on commentary, Tony Schiavone, again, sounded like he didn't want to be there. And, it was almost like, hey, you guys are lucky that we allow you to use Daly's place. And it was like, okay, we gave Kenny Omega home field advantage and he still cheated. I'm cool with that. But I just didn't like how it turned out. I thought the show, it wasn't very good. The show itself, and I'm gonna go through some of the other matches. I'm not gonna go into any detail, but I'm gonna go through like what I think about some spots and things like that I saw. But I didn't really like this show, and I didn't really care, because there was nobody who was really hot on the show. Like, Moose wasn't really hot. Moose was coming off of a loss to Rich Swann, when he lost to Rich Swann clean. So it was kind of like, it'd have been one thing if he'd had like some real momentum, but I don't feel like he had the appropriate momentum. And while I do like the idea of Don Callis firing Sami Callihan, just as a way to avoid Omega wrestling him, I like that part of the angle. But I think that we should have probably saved that and probably could have did something else for this finish. But, I mean, it's a mess, dog. Impact is just not... I'm guessing all they care about are more people signing up to Impact Plus. I think that's the only thing they care about. Because if that's all they care about, I'm sure that that's happening. I'm sure that there's, a couple of more people, probably 500, maybe 400 more people signed up for Impact Plus, and I think at $8 a piece, that's some decent coin for them. And so whatever, I'm pretty sure that's fine, and that's the goal. But they're essentially jobbing out all of their top guys. And I don't see Callahan being the guy to win the belt and be the hero of the story. So, have to say, like, hey, how many more of these top guys, like, how many more do they have? They really don't have any at all. Like, it's really Omega wrestling matches that would be, superstars level, wrestling challenge level matches, you know, on these events. They don't really have that much in the way of star power and impact for them to be just having guys doing jobs like this. If it was, if they had like a regular set of guys that could, and you're building one or two of them up to take the crown, that would make sense. But like I said, that's been the routine, the problem. As you watch your show and you don't see anybody on the show that, even if you don't like Kenny Omega, I don't see him doing a job to anybody on the Impact roster. They're going to have to bring in somebody from the outside. This is why, the Slammiversary thing is probably going to end up being such a big deal, because they got to bring in somebody who can be the hero of this story, because they don't have anybody. Outside of Moose, Sami Callihan, and Rich Swann, who do they got? They ain't got anybody. Who is a top guy? Nobody. Who's being pushed to be a top guy? Nobody. Nobody's really being pushed to be a top guy except Josh Alexander. He wasn't even on this show. So, I don't know. But let's go through the show real quick. I already mentioned that the Good Brothers did the job to Sami Callihan and Tommy Dreamer. There was a magic killer through a table in this match, and they still managed to lose. Kojima was defeated by Joe Doring. Pretty hard hitting. Eddie Edwards accompanied Kojima to the ring. This match is essentially physical dominance by Joe Doring. It was, they did a good job. Rosemary talked about bringing all the titles back to Decay, and they lost both matches. They lost both matches. Violent by Design defeated Decay when Diener pinned Steve. This the finish came with Rhino. I think the referee was distracted. Rhino pushed guy off the top rope, Crazy Steve, and he banged his head on the turnbuckle. And then Rhino, no, not Rhino, but Diener beat him with a DDT. The Rhino and Black Taurus thing, that stuff was pretty good. I've been a big proponent of Black Taurus. I really dig him. Also, Rosemary was defeated by Deonna Purrazzo. Deonna Purrazzo is a good technician. She has really good matches. The problem is the personality is not going to be there. But I just kind of knew Rosemary wouldn't win. But I did like the Venus de Milo spot where they've been working the arm the whole match, because that's Deonna Purrazzo's thing, and she works the arm. And she finally gets Rosemary into the Venus de Milo, and Rosemary doesn't submit. So I thought that was pretty cool. She didn't actually win the match with a finisher. She beat her with a regular power driver, which I thought was a surprise. But Deonna Purrazzo winning was also not a surprise. So let's see what else we got here. W. Morrissey defeated Rich Swann. Rich Swann is the guy who was just the world champion. It doesn't matter. He did a 450 splash off the ring apron onto Morrissy. I thought that was interesting. They tried to do a spot to make Rich Swann seem like a badass by having him give him the middle finger. The fuck you. I can still fight, even though he was pretty much beaten and immobilized. And Morrissey wins with a power bomb. So that was weird. The number one contenders for the X Division title was a 5-way match. It was Ace Austin, Chris Bay, Petey Williams, Rohit Raju, and Trey Miguel. The match ended in a no contest because Madman Fulton interfered and slammed everybody. I mean, they did that crazy spot where basically everybody was stacked onto him and he just threw them all down. With the exception of Ace Austin, I believe. I don't think he was involved. But the referee decided to call no contest. On a match that's no disqualifications, he calls no contest. That took the air out of me, to be quite honest. Not because I wanted to see this match so badly and it had a clean finish, but because it makes no fucking sense. Just like when they did it on NXT, they had the triple threat match that ended in no contest because Adam Cole interfered. They did the exact same thing here, except for it was one guy beating up 5 or 4. It's ridiculous, man. Just do the match that you wanted to do from the beginning. When they said that Josh Alexander said, "Oh, I'm the king of the mountain around here," I knew they were going to have a king of the mountain match. So why waste our time with this whole, we're going to do a fatal 4-way, fatal 5-way match? It's like, no, just book the fucking King of the Mountain match and then do qualifiers to get into it, And that would have been, I don't know how far away Slammiversary is. But now you're going to put all these guys, and I saw Access Media say, it's amazing how they have such a small roster and yet they have different matches all the time. No, they don't. How many times, I'm pretty sure if you've been watching Impact or if you've been following this channel, how many times have you saw the name Ace Austin, Chris Bay, Petey Williams, Rohit Raju, and Trey Miguel all in the same match? At least once a month, 2 or 3 times a month. Those 4 guys are in the same match 3 or 4 times a month. Okay? They're not doing anything new. I know that was a shot at Raw, and I'm okay with you taking shots at Raw with the rematches, but let's be real, it's not that much different. All right, it's not that much different. Tennille Dashwood defeated Jordan Grace, and Jordan Grace was pretty frustrated because Rachel Ellering kind of distracted her, kind of got involved. But we're leading to Jordan Grace's heel turn here. She's really frustrated. She's really pissed off. She lost to a schoolboy roll-up. Fire and Flavor defeated Susan and Kimberly because, of course, they did. Susan and Kimberly shouldn't even been here in this position. They need tag teams. I know that Impact prides itself on their women's division. But if you want to be honest, their women's division is pretty thin. After Deanna beat everybody, they need to re-up their women's division, Now they got Fire and Flavor beating everybody. So there needs to be some more women brought into this company. And that, I don't mean top level women, not any more female mid-carders. I mean top level women who can draw and be in the main events and stuff like that and can be stars. Otherwise, you're wasting everybody's time and all this garbage. So the final thing I want to talk about is Mr. Mayhem. So Macklin was talking about, he did a promo with Macklin, who was Steve Cutler in WWE. And he's talking about, people think that torture is painful. He's like, the torture isn't pain. Life is torture. And that, torture takes time. And for the last several years, he's had nothing but time. He's had an abundance of time. And he had time to find out who he is, who he really is. And now it's time for you to meet Mr. Mayhem. And you know what? I'm cool with that. I have no idea what it is yet. Again, so we're talking about maybe, they're going with maybe a PTSD, some type of military style storyline where maybe he was a POW in a camp, locked in a room by himself, and he created this Mr. Mayhem guy in order to survive the room or something. But that's just me thinking about it like a writer would. This is pro wrestling. Who knows what it could be? But I like the skull, and I like the feel of the promos. I like everything about it. It's coming across as being really fucking cool. And I'm willing to give it a shot, because it sounds like it's going to be badass. And since he never really got a shot in WWE, he's essentially a fresh face. He's essentially a blank slate. So I can be like, well, he was in WWE, but he didn't do anything. He never really had a personality. He never really was able to break out of the pack. So he might have been on the roster, but I wouldn't call him a WWE guy, quote unquote. He was just a guy that was on the roster. He might as well have been an extra for 3 or 4 years. He didn't have any focus put on him at all. So I'm actually interested in seeing what he does. But this show was lame as hell. As usual for Impact. AEW goes over, LOL. Let me know what you guys think if you watched it. Like, share, subscribe, buy me a shawarma in the tip jar, and I'll talk to you guys later.